Okay, why don't you start by introducing yourself, a little bit about your background, and what brings you here to the Esri User Conference this year?
All right, so I'm David Wright, Airport Director for the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, better known as ATL, or the Atlanta Airport. So I've been with the airport about 19 years now, and worked my way up from an analyst consultant up into the manager role and now director. So we have a fantastic team there, about 9, that are focused on mapping everything within the airport. What brings us here to the conference, of course, is the opportunities to network, be able to see the new and exciting functionality that comes out every year from Esri, sometimes several times a year, and primarily to learn more about and get further along with our indoors implementation of our GIS indoors for the airport.
Okay, so you've done some presentations on the indoors mapping of your airport that I've witnessed. Can you tell me a little bit about why it's special, other than the fact that it's the largest airport in the world, and what kind of makes it unique and you think does the job that you're hoping it does?
Sure, yeah. So for Atlanta, we have a tremendous amount of volume, passenger volume that we push through the airport. Approximately 290,000 passengers a day move through the airport. That works its way out to over 100 million per year. And to be able to optimize the amount of flow through our space, and it's a very tight space. So we're pretty much constrained space that we have, surrounded and bounded in by other growth within the city, especially the interstate system. So we have to do a lot with a small amount of space, and indoors mapping is one of those aspects to help as a driver to get the airport operations and the airlines and all that comes together to support our airport to meet such a world's busiest airport title that we have. It takes a lot of support, and we're just one of those aspects. And so the better we can do our job, the better outcome for the airport, for the city, and for the region as a whole.
Well, start by telling me a little bit about the bones of this airport GIS. How is it constructed? What are the technologies that you use, and how many different types of people are using it?
Yeah, and so for our team, like I said, we're a team of 9, and our skill sets are mostly in the core Esri product environment and skill set, but we do have a good number of people, within about 3 out of our 9, that are very AutoCAD specific skill sets. So they're within the airport, I guess, evolution of things and how things came about. It started off in very much an AutoCAD discipline and support role, and eventually the GIS became a part of that team as the software matured and became kind of more desired within the whole business unit case. Things that the AutoCAD would be more challenged to do, since it's such a graphic discipline to be able to communicate and deliver information in a meaningful or desired way for these other business units. Business units to include our properties teams that manage the airlines, tenants, and concessions lease needs, and so that's a huge part of why we're doing what we're doing with indoors. It's to take a CAD historical business flow to meet the properties and concessions lease management needs, as well as what's kind of spawned off on that with the need for supporting planning and engineering for upcoming capital projects that are making their way through their life cycle as well, and so they're constantly coming for us to be able to meet that need. So we got to keep CAD. AutoCAD's very much a part of what we do for the engineering planning aspect of things, but when it comes to properties lease management or security operations, when they're taking care of the facility, CAD is not quite the optimal tool, and so Esri and the ArcGIS platform is what we've adopted. Over the years, we've standardized on that software, not only at the Department of Aviation with the cities, but other departments across the city have all standardized on the Esri and the ArcGIS platform. So we entered into an enterprise license agreement, which has now opened up all the licensing for the software that we could possibly need. And so it's been the standard that the airport has used, as well across the city, which owns and operates the Atlanta airport.
Is the outdoors and then the runways, is all tied to the same GIS, or are those separate in terms of the air traffic versus the passenger traffic, I guess?
Yeah, as GIS began to emerge at the airport, it focused primarily on the outside. And so we have a term in the aviation world called planimetrics, and I guess it's used a little bit across the spectrum of the GIS world. But planimetrics is where we focused primarily because the FAA has a requirement that the airport provide what's called an airport layout plan. And so these planimetrics drive that mapping source that gets uploaded or delivered up to the FAA as a requirement to show where all your runways, taxiways, all your airfield signage, airfield lighting, everything that you could see from the surface or the aerial has to be mapped and given this data population or the schema population that is a standard that's required and kind of derived from the FAA, and these are delivered out in what's called airport circulars, and they define very specifically what the airport has to do to meet FAA requirements. And the airport circular that many refer to as 18B defines what the schema is for all of that mapping of the airfield, what kind of attributes are going to populate which data layers that belong to a data set for the FAA, and then all that gets done in a GIS, and Esri, being a partner with the FAA, has built those templates in to their ArcGIS data formats within the geo databases and that type of thing. So we're being fully compliant with the FAA's 18B since 2010 timeframe, and so we work very hard at that outdoor mapping. But what was always lacking was the indoor, and so we focused first on the outdoor, and then we turned our attention to the interior side.
I would imagine that an airport with all of the the runways and the mechanical stuff, this would be one of the most complicated GIS and models possible. How does you deal with all the complexity of the amount of different types of data, the different the buildings, the people, the stuff? How you were able to accommodate for that kind of vastness?
Yeah, well, fortunately for us, we have the ability to organize within the, like I said, the schema, this database schema. So it helps us keep track of what needs to go where when we develop data. And we began to move to a cloud capability probably about 2017 timeframe, as these software as a service, these types of hosted environments in the cloud became available. So ArcGIS Online has been a big vehicle for us to be able to put a massive amount of information in a very organized way, and then retrieve that and be able to deliver it to the different maps or apps or systems that are looking for that type of information. So being a small team, but a massive amount of responsibility and data that started to accumulate, we began to look for these cloud solutions. And so Esri began to emerge in that as well. We were right there as a beta user when ArcGIS Online was just being developed. So we got in early on that and have been with it ever since. I think that ArcGIS Online actually started around the 15 era, 2015, we got into the beta program and then just kind of rolled right into when it became a released product. And then eventually the portal, which is more of the customizable, specific cloud solution for things that don't come out of the SaaS type of hosted environment. And so we began to federate those and to bring those two environments together to meet a complete need within the airport. So yeah, we take advantage of all these offerings to be able to accomplish such a overwhelming task when it comes to this sheer amount of data, and then be able to make sense of it and deliver it out in a quick and reliable way. That's the other thing we discovered, that we were doing a lot of things with what's called on-prem or on-premise very early on, but it became very challenging to be able to go through all the requirements, all the procurement, wait till the funding became available, get other business units like our information technology team to fit us into already a very demanding project cycle, and then being able to be more agile when the software as a service and these hosted environments came out, meant that we didn't have to worry about hardware or even software deployments or procurement cycles or funding. We were able to just be very quick and build up and just focus on the data side of things, developing data, and then map production and services production to meet the end user's needs in a very short amount of time.
Do you fit into like a larger IT system at the airport? Is it GIS? Like, I'm wondering, like, there's got to be like security concerns at an airport, because that data is pretty important. It's not just your run-of-the-mill city GIS.
Yeah, we've always had support from our IT, but GIS has kind of been a lesser, I guess, understandable way of doing what it is we do. Most of us think it was just a hard copy map, and not a need to be so concerned about security. But we've always tried to educate and to socialize that out, get their assistance and guidance. But as of recently, the general manager of the Atlanta airport has seen that as a place we need to get to. So as of this year, our GIS moved from the AEC side of the organization, which was planning and development, and has now been moved and reorged within the IT business side. So we're just now coming into that side of the organization and figuring out what the new fit is, what the new workflows are, what we're going to do to make it more of an IT, I guess, business focus within the airport. So that's all new to us. And as I talk to other GIS teams across the airport industry, is like at this conference that we see, you'll find them just about in every part of the organization you can think of. But going to the IT side of the organization is becoming more and more common.
So about how many, and just list them randomly, I guess, people are using your GIS to help do their jobs throughout the airport? Like, how many different services and things are you guys taking on?
Yeah, that's a big one. We have about 400 users in our named user Active Directory kind of tracking that we have. So we're utilizing about 400 users. These are users specifically in the City of Atlanta Department of Aviation or somewhere working with this core staff of the airport. That would exclude anything regarding the airlines, concession teams, and all the other support roles that come into play, or the federal agents, and certainly out into the public. We're just we're not at that point now where we're providing that type of access to our system. So we kind of manage it and secure it with a authentication of user making sure that user is really within the system, so there are verifications in that regard, and that's who we use now. We do offer out a very limited amount of non-credentialed access, and most of those things you could already find on Google Map or these other type of mapping services that are freely available through Apple or through Google. So we don't do much out to the public. Everything that we do is pretty much internal.
Internal as in, is everyone like at the airport, or are there other personnel and staff throughout the city of Atlanta that are also using this?
So the majority are at the airport. Some use it remotely, but most of them are folks who actually are on premise at the airport. The city of Atlanta has access, but it's not as much as what our Department of Public Works or Department of Human Resources have a much need for our data unless they're actually focused out at the airport. We do have a few users across the city, but that would be for things like watershed management who actually have some sort of need to see our data. We're pretty geographically separate from the rest of the city. We reside, kind of outside the city limits for the most part. The airport has grown in such a way that we primarily reside mostly outside city jurisdictional boundaries. We actually fall more. I think the airport actually spans 5 jurisdictional boundaries. And so we have 2 counties, Fulton County, which is the city of Atlanta, resides in, but the majority of the airport falls in Clayton County, Georgia, which is outside the city of Atlanta's jurisdictional boundary. We only have a sliver of the city of Atlanta inside there, and we have mostly College Park, city of College Park, unincorporated Clayton County. We have a little sliver of city of Hapeville, city of East Point, and then Atlanta owns just a little bit of it. But when it comes to the ownership and the operator, the agreements are that the city of Atlanta has to provide all those services. And so we have fire stations spread out within the airport boundary. 4 in particular, we have a city, have a police department, residing in like a precinct inside the airport, and so the city has to supply those services, but jurisdictionally, boundary-wise, very little of the airport fits in the city of Atlanta.
Okay, so it's pretty evident that you had a very complicated GIS model, more so than just about anywhere. But for a few other people that have such a complicated system to develop and run, what might be some of the lessons you learned in doing this, that like if you were to pass on to somebody who maybe not as big an airport, but let's say they're trying to do an airport GIS, what might be some tips you could say to, hey, these are those things that we came across that could be potential problems. Yeah. These are the things you're going to really need to integrate and get approval from. I guess some of the tips you might pass on to someone having to develop something similar.
Yeah, sure. Probably as was done for us as we were getting started this 17, 18 year ago beginning, was to bring some help in for doing a needs assessment. So starting with just a stakeholder engagement. So basically going out and meeting and sitting down and talking with the various business units inside your organization to discover what are they using now, what kind of requests and support do they need for mapping, where would they like to see it evolve to or grow to, and then to be able to take all that information back and perform kind of a needs assessment and a prioritization. We looked at what are some of the core data, geospatial data needs across all those business units, and start there as opposed to starting with a small focus just for 1 or 2, but what are all of them asking for? And almost all of them are asking for more reference data, these planimetrics and floor plans. That was one of the 2 big ones, and the ability to be able to build a GIS or a geodatabase representation for space use and space function. That became one of our core layers that we focused on early on for interior, which we called the interior space layer, and then we began to populate or build that data schema based on those needs assessments. What were they asking us for? The ability to identify unique each room, and then to be able to use that reference for other systems such as lease management or security access control, and also the ability to develop evacuation plans and that type of thing. So those were the core aspects of public safety, what drives our revenue from a big perspective, which was our lease, how we lease our information out, be able to utilize and optimize the space we have for the optimum amount of revenue, and in serving the folks that want to operate out of our airport, our airlines, our concessions, and those types of people. So needs assessment, start with what the majority want, and then get down to the more individual, ask, and don't try to swallow or chew up the elephant all in one meal.
That's, again, extensive. How long did it take, do you think, to go through and ask all those questions before you even got to really even start working on the GIS itself?
Yeah, a good 6-7 months just to go through it all and then assess it and make some sense out of it, and then go back and present that to the decision makers and those who are going to approve the funding. And then we also had to make a pitch or a defense for the amount of staff we would need to do it, and how to go about it. So it took a good 6 to 7 months to go through that whole process just to get to the ask, and then you're usually waiting a whole funding year, fiscal year that we have to operate on. So we're looking at 1.5 years before we're ready to actually start doing anything. So a lot of planning went into the case, but as we began to do that, we just kind of worked at it in phases by prioritization. We didn't get to where we are today in a short amount of time. Like I said, the GIS group has been took about 2 to 3 years to form and fully grow out, and then began to actually taking on this immense amount of work, probably within about 5 years before we really started to get to where we had hoped to from that very beginning of the assessment stage. And then over time, we've been able to work our way through the organization such that, like I said, the general manager saw that we were an enterprise resource, and it made sense to move us into an enterprise group, and that's why we're in information technology today.
That's incredible. Because you spent so much time on the back end, do you think that has made your progress smoother, or are there still surprises, curveballs that show up that you have to deal with no matter how well you planned?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would think that steady is the course for the meeting the goals and continuing to build success, but looking for adjustments. They're not major adjustments, but certainly are when they come. I've noticed that as we've begun to focus more indoors, our attention to our operations teams have been something that hasn't been a big ask, but now is, and they need that core foundational level of GIS to meet where their optimal or their operational level of drive is. I mean, they're getting a lot of attention, rightly so, when it comes to safety and security, keeping the wait lines down or the queuing to get to the wait lines to a safe and manageable way. and utilizing GIS is something that the operations teams are starting to come to us more and more. They realize that they just can't rely upon traditional pen and paper or spreadsheets or ways that they have been using for years, and they need something more dynamic, more spatially intelligent, and that's where we are, kind of making those adjustments. We still support the planning and development and that core AEC side of where our beginnings had us 17 years ago, but now we're starting to fold in more for other business units that haven't been asking historically.
So our audience is those engineers developing the models and the buildings. They also do, the floor plans. How would their work be incorporated into what you're doing in the past and now as you're using? Is the ArcGIS kind of able to bring all that in easier than it used to be, or tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, and so for us, that workflow has been well understood and well identified, but for the engineering side, the capital improvement side of the organization, they've been pretty much focused and staying with their traditional way of doing things, which has been, unfortunately, paper-based drawings is what they've always asked for. And as long as they can, build the project on time, keeping to schedule, on budget, that has been the priorities for them when it comes to giving it to GIS and having it utilized throughout the rest of the organization hasn't been their primary focus. And so, they are held to a pretty tight budget and schedule, and so that's where their focus is. But over the years, the design team has become more aware of what's called a BIM, Building for Information Modeling format, and they see the consultants in the private sector just doing incredible design work and then delivery work in that format. And so that has been something we're working hard on. It's been a challenge for us to move to that place where we can put a standard out in front of a project that before it gets released for a bid or accepted on a proposal, and make that a requirement out front. So that's where we're focused on today. We have a new team within our engineering side of the house called Facilities and Asset Management. They see very much the benefit of going to a BIM standard or some sort of a standard out front, so that we can now bring that into a GIS data set in an efficient manner. And so we're looking at the tools, but I would say out of all the skill sets within the GIS and the tool sets available by Esri and Autodesk, the more challenging part for us has just been the culture of how people typically have done their work and their business workflows, and looking for these more modern techniques that would help the organization as a whole, but very difficult to change culture. But we're getting there. For the first time, we have people asking the right questions, and we have an effort underway now to actually have a team that's responsible for assuring that when a project gets released for award, that it has this requirement to deliver a BIM or a Revit file, which is that that standard put into a CAD deliverable, to come to us and then utilize that throughout the GIS and the other systems that require that type of first delivery before we can process it and give it back in a system or a map or an application for these other users across the organization. So I'm hopeful. Seems like we're starting to really focus on that. It's kind of like the analogy that a battleship or an aircraft carrier. The larger the ship, to be able to turn it, it does take some time. And so I think we're starting to make that turn.